let's build a UI. One thing that I've done on my project is under scenes, I've created a new one called menu. Maybe you can call it main menu. Doesn't really matter. And in it, I am going to add a UI component, and it's going to get us started here. For now, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're going to make a button, and in the next video, we're going to make some text in our other project. So if I add button, you're going to see that it builds this thing called canvas first off. And now I see this button kind of filling my screen in a really big way. So what's going on here? Well, Unity, the way that it builds the UI is it creates this canvas that the other elements sit inside of. And in 3D view, it looks a little bit odd. What we're going to do is up here, click on 2D. And now we can view our scene by scrolling out and sliding sideways to see the two-dimensional view of our UI. This is going to overlay right in front of the camera, just like this. The canvas will fill our camera when we're actually running inside of our world. So if I press play, we should be now seeing this button appearing on the screen with all the normal 3D rendering happening in the background from wherever the camera is positioned. So it doesn't matter where our camera is, this UI canvas will always overlay in front of whatever that camera angle is, which is convenient. It makes it really easy for the UI to kind of follow things properly. So what do I do with this button? Well, the first thing is I can use all my normal settings where I can like rotate it if I want, I can stretch it if I want, or I can move it into position. And here, I'm just gonna move it kind of in a centered way. And take a look underneath my button. It has a child called text. This button parent is responsible for the colors of the button itself, so I can change the background to whatever I want. Let's just give it a bit of a hue there. The highlighted color I can change for if I had highlighting going on in it. The pressed color, so it changes once it's triggered to something else. Maybe I make this a darker red so that I can, once it gets pressed, we see this color transform and change. You can play around with all these different settings so there's a bit of feedback. Well, it looks like it switches back to the other one. So we'll play around with these kind of on our own. And, well, that's the highlight color when I moused over it. Let's just see there for a sec. Moused over, gray, click stark red. So see how it kind of switches over? And if I click off, it goes back to that lighter red color. So lots of different easy customization for the button itself. But the text is really what I want to worry about here. Instead of button, I want to have this text say start game. And now it says start game. You'll notice that you can actually click on things easily in the UI on the screen. We have to click on it in our hierarchy. Just a little thing we have to be aware of. And of course, we can change the font size. We can change the font itself and do lots of different customized settings for text that we're used to. I'll let you play around with those things on your own. What I want to be doing is customizing what pressing this button actually does. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this because I want this to be the start button, just in case there's other buttons on my screen. And under this button, I actually have the ability to have an on-click event, something that I can trigger to have change information. So I'm actually going to be making a script that I can trigger with my on-click event. So I'm going to call this start button handler, something that's going to handle the behaviors I want for this start button. Let it build and pop it open. And inside of the script, I'm just going to delete everything that's here. And I'm going to create a script, public void start game. And in it, I'm going to use my scene manager. And I might have to import it here. So let's import using my scene management. And I'm going to load, clicked off it for a sec there. Load scene. I'm just going to load my first scene. So how do we manage scenes again? Let's remind ourselves really quick. Well, if I go File, Build Settings, I have the ability to see the scenes that have been loaded. I can add open scenes and rearrange them. I already have my menu and level 1 in the right order. So this is slot 0, this is slot 1. So when I say load scene 1, it means the first level, with this one being the 0th level. Okay, so this method, when it's triggered, will load our first level. But what does the triggering? Well, I actually need to be able to connect this start button's event to that. So what I'm going to do is add to list some object. And what is that object that I'm going to be accessing when this button is pressed? And this might seem a little bit counterintuitive in a way, but I'm accessing itself. So when I click on it, I want to gain access to itself. Don't worry about this drop-down menu. Just leave it on runtime only. And under no function, I want to access the level of functionality where the methods exist that I want to influence. So I could, of course, actually change information about the game object or about the image or about the button itself. I could actually change the information on click. But my start button handler is a script that I made, and I have this method start game that I can access. So I'm going to click on that. And what this does is that on click, it's going to trigger the event for the start button to run its script's method, which should, if all things are connected properly, allow me to drop into my game. So I now have the ability to have a clickable button that takes me to a new scene with things positioned in the UI in a custom way. Notice if I don't let go, it doesn't go through, but I click, and there the event is triggered. And knowing that, you can create all sorts of functionality, methods in different scripts that you simply connect into the event system and then trigger it in different ways, nice and easily. In the next lesson, we're going to dive back into our first level and add some UI components for timers and scores.